What is the most unethical thing you have ever been asked to do by your employer? Worked the night shift at a shady motel, was overlooking the security cameras and spotted a guy breaking into a truck. I called the cops. While on the phone with them, I witnessed the owner of the truck confront the man. The man got all stabby with the owner and got him pretty good in the gut. Stabby takes off, so I go out to render aid to the owner of the truck while the authorities came. Once the paramedics took over, I called my boss, who tells me not to give the cops any testimony or access to the cameras. I did the opposite of this, because my boss was a major butthole anyway. I used to deliver furniture. I wasn't asked to do something just unethical, it was straight illegal. We were regularly asked to do deliveries well beyond the time the dot said we were allowed to be in the truck. I finally printed off several copies of the laws and would hand them to the managers anytime they asked. I found out after I left they had the new crew work something like a 37-hour shift, driving a box truck. They're lucky no one ever died. This is rampant in the trucking industry, especially with companies that do direct hire and local regional deliveries. Not really unethical, but when I was a call receiver for AAA emergency roadside service, we had a script we had to read for every call. In this script, it would offer suggestions based on what type of service was being requested. Need a tire change? We were made to offer to bring you to a local mechanic to sell you new tires. I would frequently get a talking to because my call times were too short. I am sorry, I thought these people were calling because they are broke down somewhere and need emergency service, not a freaking sales spiel. Especially when they started the call with "my cell is about to die, please help." I quit 2 weeks shy of a year. That was a stressful environment. That's beyond awful. What the frick? I'm GM at a restaurant and was asked by my area manager to purposely short people's hours in order to make sure we come in on labor costs. Hard no from me, and if I find out that it has been done anyway, I will be reporting it to the operations director. Never mess with anyone's money. I thank you so much for this. I have worked in too many restaurants where I have to fight for 28 hours a week and then be made to work 60 hours a week. The dinner rush is stressful enough, but I took a lower because I was just too stressed trying to work 2 jobs and not knowing at all how many hours I would get this week. Just, thanks. I know labor costs can run high, but seriously. At a job interview I was asked, how would you rate your comfort level with breaking the law? I said, I don't know, 1, 0, whatever the lowest option is. I'm not going to do it. That was the end of the interview. Worked at a gas station in college. The manager was the son of the owner and basically got to come and go as he pleased. He had it pretty good. The store was open 6 AM to 11 PM. He would stroll in around 8-9 AM and take care of a few things. Most days, he was out the door by 1 PM at the latest. Then his dad sold the store. He stayed on as the manager, but he suddenly had new rules he was expected to follow. He had to drive around town twice a day and report the gas prices from a half dozen other stations in the area, which he never did and always forged. He was expected to work 50 hours a week, and when new ownership found out he was barely working half as much, they made him start clocking in and out despite being a salaried employee. Well, that lasted maybe 2 days and he started forging his time card. He would come in around 8 AM, leave at noon, and come back at like 6-7 PM just to punch out. That lasted maybe a week and then he started asking employees to commit his time card fraud for him. He would have someone clock him in around 6 AM when the store opened, and he would call the store around 5-6 PM every day and ask someone to clock him out. Looking back on it, I'm more bothered about it now than I was at the time. I didn't even realize I could have easily been fired for helping him commit fraud like that. Photoshop tires of a tractor. One tire is worth about 3,000 euros, so they looked demolished and the boss could get a second set of tires for free. Raw fraud. Lied to customers to lure them into what was basically a scam. The job was technical customer support. We were supposed to help people with real problems. Turned more and more into a sales job, with the problem solving being an important side note. Oh, the phone you received doesn't work? Well, I'm sorry. Here, have this crap that will cost you money after a month for free. No, I don't have time to solve your issue, sir. I have another customer. Please try turning it off and on again. Bye. This feels very Comcastic. Sell a $1,500 furnace, installation included, for $5,000 to her old lady because she'll never know she's being ripped off. Funny side note, that guy is in jail for money laundering and embezzlement now. Worked in clothing retail. Some of our jeans were found to contain carcinogenic dye, and we had to box them up and put them in the back room until we could send them away. No problem. We put away like 4, maybe 5 boxes. Almost a year goes by and those jeans are still out there. Finally head office sends through a list of instructions on how to label them in order to send them away. Thing is, the instructions are really sketchy. They weren't sent using the official HO email, and they explicitly tell us not to inform the delivery driver what is in the boxes, that we can't use the usual delivery labels we use, and not to write anything about recall or hazard or anything of the sort on the box. Anyway, delivery driver rocks up and he immediately knows what's up because we aren't using the labels we're meant to be using. He tells us he can't take the boxes, and we say fine, we're casuals. The boxes sit there a bit longer and our area administrator gets on us to force the delivery guy to take the boxes. I do a little research. Carcinogenic jeans aren't meant to be transported in the regular delivery truck. Our company has got to pay for a different service because they're classed as hazardous material. The company wanted to save money on the products they'd already lost money on by sending it through the regular delivery channels. Eventually the area administrator had to come in and pick them up himself. I wish I had told the delivery driver so he could have reported the company to his company. Sounds like a valid OSHA complaint there. I worked as a lifeguard in HS. For the most part management was all great. One day around closing time we had a monstrous thunderstorm. I mean multiple flashes of lightning within 2 miles of us every minute. We had finished cleanup, which in itself was unsafe since we had to go outside to do it, except hadn't gotten the toys, noodles and those foam balls, out of the pool. I was the most senior person there, other than the manager, and decided that we'll just leave the toys. The only ways to get them out was to either get into the pool, or to use a 20-foot metal pole with a hook on the end to get them. Either method was too dangerous to do during a thunderstorm just so that the pool will look neater. The manager caught us leaving and told me cleanup wasn't finished. There was still stuff in the pool. I told him that I'm not risking my life for some foam toys, and he then told me to have the other guy do it. I just walked out instead. I'm not 100% sure whether he was actively unethical or just dumb, because I saw him with the hook as I drove off. I got written up for it. Sure thing boss. I'll just stay on the clock until the thunderstorm passes and I can safely remove the toys from the pool. Owner of restaurant had me, dishwasher, and a line cook break into another employee's residence to look for stolen items from the restaurant. Search came back negative. To withhold the pay of new employees without telling them. He planned on giving it to them after 12 months so that they would stay with the company, but failed to tell them that before they were hired. Used to work in management in a fast food establishment. Store manager had all of the truck receiving managers in an understanding that if our food cost numbers were off we were to make things go missing from our delivery. I was not put into the loop on this scheme up front as I had just been transferred into this store but started to get suspicious when I saw the truck driver walking around our grill area checking side freezers and closets and I'm like WTF is this guy doing? A couple of deliveries later I catch one of my guys hiding a box of a freezer food in our lobby mop closet. I straight out asked him what are you doing? I need to count that so I can sign for it. And I made him put it into the freezer where it belonged. Turns out the store manager had gone to the boys who do the truck and told them what we were down on and what needed to go missing. So they had been doing this for months and it never occurred to them, a couple of guys fresh out of high school. It was wrong. Whole cases of bacon, cases of lettuce, frozen desserts, whatever we were sucking at that month. I told them to immediately stop doing that on my watch and went to the store manager and told her under no circumstances was that okay. It's stealing from your distributor and I'll have no part of it. She just looked at me dumbfounded and that was the last time I was scheduled to unload a truck. I got done a couple of months later. The cover got blown off after I left though. This woman had been with the company for over 40 years but pee off the wrong new shift leader who went to the franchise owner operator and also reported it directly to the distributor to avoid an internal cover up. She graciously accepted their offer to retire a tad early. She was in her early 60s anyway, and keep her pension. So in other words, there were no consequences for her actions. I program and install robots and other machines used in factories. Though not my employer, the number of customers requesting safety features be removed is astounding. No, you can't operate the robot at normal operating speed with the guard doors open. It can crush someone in the blink of an eye. Literally, it isn't just international countries with lax worker protection laws. Safety in a lot of US factories is often overlooked for efficiency's sake. I teach a college class that's part of the core curriculum and where you're required to get at least a C, 73%, to pass. If you get a C or D, you have to retake the class. The head of the department told us that if a student is getting a C or D, we should just go ahead and give them an F to avoid dealing with them asking to have their grade adjusted up to a C. My last job, I literally spent every single day fighting with my boss and stopping him from telling our workers to do illegal stuff or instructing me to do it. He would try to get me to circumvent government procurement regulations, harassment of employees, safety hazards and environmental violations. In all my time there, I cannot think of one time where he got something past me, but it was pure heck. Just one random horrible thing was the day he was stupid enough to instruct a worker to get the excessive lime scale off a piece of equipment once with chemicals and let it flow down the storm drain. When I saw this out my window, we got into a huge fight and he instructed the employee to continue until I could show proof that this was illegal. I finally did, but the damage was done and the driveway was stained green from the runoff. I live in New York State. We have what's known as a 3-hour rule here. Pretty much it's a rule where you cannot be scheduled for anything less than a 3-hour shift unless you volunteer for it. If you are working your shift and have not reached the 3-hour point, you can't be told to go home yet. You have to volunteer. Otherwise, your business would need to pay you for a full 3-hour shift, even if you didn't work it. I worked for a certain sandwich company that delivers very quick deliveries in one of their breakthrough stores in upstate New York. We were asked by our area manager to ignore this rule. I didn't. I would ask people if they wanted to leave, and if they said no, I would just say okay and move on. Eventually they figured it out. Frick that company. Jimmy John's is on its freaking way out, man. The menu is maximized as is and the food is just crappy Cisco meets some dry French bread. Not super unethical, but once I worked with a catering company that would sell fried chicken for larger parties, weddings. Thing is, we didn't have a deep fryer, so where did we get the fried chicken? From the gas station down the street, of course. TBF, it was amazing fried chicken, but we never told anyone where it came from because people don't like hearing the expensive food they paid for came from a gas station. That sounds expensive. Even if you marked up the chicken a ridiculous amount, you're still not making anywhere near what you could if you would have gotten it from a restaurant supplier. The gas station marks up the chicken to sell to you, so you're overpaying for the chicken already. I wouldn't say it's unethical, but definitely not smart financial wise for the catering company. Worked in a restaurant. A server dropped a plate of food. My boss saw and made her pick it all up, put it on a new plate and serve it. Not me, but my friend got a roofing job when he was 18. On his very first day he fell off a roof and wasn't wearing any safety gear. He broke his leg and the boss drove him to the hospital, but when they arrived he told my friend to act like they were a gay couple and that they had an accident at a park. I think he offered my friend money as well, but in the end he ended up taking workers' comp. I worked for a low-income apartment complex as a leasing agent. A resident came in wanting to extend her lease to a month-to-month basis, which the lease clearly stated that she could do. I asked the property manager what paperwork we needed to draw up in order to make that happen. Her answer was that we don't do that. I told her that the resident has a signed document saying that we do. Her response was tell her to get a lawyer if she wants to contest it. I wonder if that's the kind of thing for which treble damages applies. Clean the ceiling above the area where all of our pizzas are cut and boxed up. This would have resulted in chemicals raining down on all the customers' food. I told him no. Worked at Dunkin' Donuts and a lady had asked that we not put cream in her coffee as she was allergic. Well, of course the shift leader at the time made it with cream and told me to give it to her anyways as she didn't feel like remaking it. I reported her to the manager. Worked as a leasing consultant in college. Student housing. We pre-leased apartments for about 11 months before our big wave of move-ins before the new year started. We had a lot of low-income first-generation college students come in and lease with us, and they bring their parents and family members with them for support and to celebrate such a milestone in the family. Anyways, we had a program where if the kid was getting financial aid through the school to assist with housing, we would postpone their first rent payment until the university issued them their financial aid checks. These usually come within the first 2 weeks of the semester. When the resident got their check, they had to give us 3 months rent in one go. Super common in college environments and is sometimes the only way a low-income student can live on campus. Anyways, Cooperate comes down about 2 weeks before move-in to make sure that everything goes smoothly and finds out that we have been having these kids and their families sign these documents agreeing to postpone their first rent payments until they got their financial aid. We literally had hundreds of these kids who agreed to sign with us because we had that program. Corporate told us to get on the phones and call every single person and tell them that that document they signed with us, in some cases almost a year ago, would not be honored and that they would not be allowed to get their keys and move in without money up front. Move-in was in less than 2 weeks. Bull crap. I told my boss to have me do anything else. Work with the maintenance team. Go out and market. Anything. I just couldn't call these people and do that to them. He threatened to take away my commissions if I didn't. We got into a shouting match while all my little sheep co-workers made those phone calls. I quit and so did another co-worker. There needs to be a subreddit for things like this that are scary as an adult but not to a kid. When I was a teenager, I was a valet, and one day got into a minor accident with another valet while parking a car. We turned into each other, impacting at the corners of our bumpers. Unable to see each other because a different valet had illegally parked on a curb in the lot. We brought the cars back to the front and found some little scratches and damage on both vehicles. Nothing serious, but still. When the lady came to pick her car up, my supervisor instructed me not to tell her about the damage if she didn't notice it. She got her kid in the car, then walked around to the driver's seat and handed me $1 as a tip. I turned to the supervisor with my mouth open, but he gave me a stern head shake, and she drove off none the wiser. It was just a bumper and just some minor scratches, dents, but still, it really upset me. I always avoid letting valets take my cars unless it's required these days. I'll park it myself, thank you. I used to make sugar. I had the flu big time and was working in the packaging area. It's 100% against the company's own work rules to work in open sugar areas if you have an infectious disease. The supervisors of that area had a fuzzy definition as to what constituted an infectious disease, but it definitely didn't include the flu to them. They then told me they had sick people working around the sugar all the time. Hard sell high interest store credit cards to people who demographically might not be very knowledgeable about financial matters, specifically the elderly and minorities, especially people who seem to be struggling financially or not completely fluent in English, and to hook them in by saying they could get up to $1,200 instant credit with only $15 monthly payments. But the $15 minimum monthly payments didn't even cover interest. So they'd come in and pay their $15 every month and not understand why their balance kept getting bigger. If we were caught explaining interest to them and educating them as to why their balance kept getting bigger despite making the monthly minimum payments, we could be fired. Former management at a retail store. We had several instances of corporate telling us to handle all major cleanup after the close at night. Here was the issue. We had several teenagers working for us. That meant there are limits on the number of hours the minors could work. Having to stay an extra hour or two after close meant we violated child labor laws. Now ultimately the employees didn't care. They made more money. But it was an issue, based on corporate saying that customers come first and we shouldn't be seen cleaning or doing major stocking while open. I dunno. I think our public image is superseded by law, Brenda. Oh, and lying about the product. But that was more of a fluffing thing. No biggie. Back before I realized I didn't want to be a programmer, I worked for a giant company. The company basically creates and manages websites, among other things, for thousands of car dealerships across the country US. It was a relatively entry-level position, so most of my job was making sure a specific client's website looked identical across all browsers. So I'd be loading up Internet Explorer and Firefox and tinkering with the CSS to make sure an image wasn't one pixel off on a particular browser. I asked my boss if I could get something slightly more mentally engaging, and I was given a task to implement a specific JavaScript code. I was initially excited because I hadn't worked with JavaScript in a professional capacity before, so I got to try something new. But then I read through the details of the task. Essentially, our websites came pre-packaged with pop-ups. The pop-up would be an ad for a special car sale or something, so they weren't going out to advertisers or anything like that. But the client was concerned that people were using pop-up blockers. The JavaScript code I was given essentially delayed the pop-up to only appear after the user clicked something on the page. These are relatively common now, but at the time it felt super skeezy. I know it's nothing compared to a lot of what I've seen on this thread, but I just felt so dirty being the one to add a code that made a pop-up appear. I was that guy. TLDR. Had to implement pop-ups that beat pop-up blockers. Let me put your mind at ease, those still get blocked. In the pet store, I told my manager that a young rabbit had a runny nose. She told me to put it in a plastic bag and put it in the freezer. The rabbit would have to be quarantined for a week, during which it couldn't be sold, and we'd have to feed it and give it $1 or so worth of antibiotics. On the other hand, if it died within 30 days of our purchasing it, the distributor would refund our money or replace the rabbit for free. I refused. I later found the rabbit in the freezer. I quit the pet store and now sell guns for a living. My co-workers, customers, and employers are much better people than anyone I ever met in the pet industry. OMFGs. I wouldn't have done that either. We used to get long-haired hammies with wet tail by the dozens. Squirting that pink crap into their little mouths whilst they try to kill you was so much fun. But we managed to save 75% of the sickies. Your manager seems to be like my old manager. Freaking clueless and no heart. I've cried about too many animals to count. Copy and paste MIT's disaster recovery plan for an Air Force contract. The Air Force did not ask me to do this. The defense contractor for whom I worked asked me in an effort to appear as if they actually had some kind of loss mitigation plan in place in the event that our servers went down. It was a sham. The government asked them years ago if they had some kind of DRP in place, and the response was always, oh, yes, we do. Of course, it's always a work in progress, but yes, we have one. They didn't, and copying one of MIT's plans was their idea of disaster recovery. No testing, no knowledge of implementation. Straight copy off their website, remove and replace MIT for company name. It was a joke. But this was what I was expected to provide. Instead, I quit. They didn't see that coming. I worked at a coffee shop where the owner said in a meeting that we were to kick out any homeless people. I wanted to clarify for the newer staff there and said, just the ones that hang around all night and don't buy anything. If they want to buy a coffee and warm up, it's fine. No, she wanted us to kick out anyone who looked homeless because it didn't look good having them in the store. Even if they wanted to buy something, my store kept serving our regulars, regardless of where they had to sleep at night. In a time where we can play hipster or homeless, banning all people who look like they might be homeless seems really stupid, especially in a coffee shop. Many years ago I worked for a bank that was at the time having a big expansion of ATMs into small shops. We had a database that worked out where those on low incomes were most likely, how close other machines were, etc. Then put in small notes and charged a higher rate for transactions. In more affluent areas there wasn't a charge at all. I was supposed to be the one who decided which charged and which didn't to basically screw the poor. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.